Hello, everybody. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live on this Tuesday. And a big day here at the Giants facility. There's a reason that we are in our fancy Sunday attire here with our suits and ties and jackets and whatnot. The John Harbaugh press conference took place today. He was officially announced as the Giants' next head coach. Now, we're assuming everyone that's listening to this program watched the press conference, so we're not going to recap everything that John Harbaugh said in the press conference. But, Paul, we did get access to Giants owner Chris Mara. We got access to Giants general manager Joe Schoen, and then John Harbaugh again on the side after everything was done. So why don't we start in the order in which we talked to everybody? Let's start with Chris Mara. You got there before I did, so why don't you go through the important notes from Chris Mara speaking to the media after the John Harbaugh press conference.
Okay, so the Giants organization did not originally think that John Harbaugh would become available. And it was only the Friday before the game against the Steelers that Chris went to both John Mara and Steve Tisch and said, guys, I need to go Sunday down to go see John Harbaugh at his home. If this is going to be possible, I need to be there. We need to, in his words, act, not react. That's what Chris Mara said specifically.
Be proactive.
They were concerned about all the coaching openings that were going to becoming available. So Chris, who had never met or spoken to John Harbaugh in his life, reached out to Tom Coughlin and asked Tom to make the connection. Tom makes the connection and says to Chris, quote, "Get your ass down there." And you know Tom, you know he wasn't kidding. So Chris goes down on Sunday, meets with John Harbaugh for 2 hours, and basically most of the conversation was one way. He said that John Harbaugh asked him a ton of questions about the players, the roster, the organization, the facilities. It was basically a one-sided interview from Harbaugh to Chris Mara. Now, in terms of what came out of all of this as things progressed, Chris said that Harbaugh's a born leader and he's got credibility. And in terms of the structure of the front office, he said Harbaugh will be the most important cog in the wheel, but it will be a collaborative effort in the decisions that are made. He said we are very comfortable with him and he is with us. So they're not anticipating any kind of friction or tug of wars. And quite honestly, you know what? John Harbaugh said the same thing, John.
Yeah, and I think the theme that we got from all the players here, and we'll get to what Joe Schoen had to say in a little bit as well, but no one seems to be concerned with how this is set up. And you know, John Harbaugh said, yeah, I'm going to report directly to ownership. Joe Schoen goes, yeah, that doesn't bother me. I don't really care who has, final say if there's a disagreement, because the whole point is, and Joe Schoen said this, and John Harbaugh said this as well, is this is going to be a collaborative process like it's always been. And the key, everyone pushes in the same direction.
Right.
They come to a team agreement when these big decisions get made over who to draft or what free agents to sign, whatever the big decision happens to be at the time. And that's the type of decision you want to make. If you get to the point where the organization is split and you got two sides that are against each other, that's a failure in itself.
Yes.
Because you haven't come to a collaborative
system
decision.
failure.
So, yeah, both John Harbaugh and Joe Schoen said how that's written down on paper is not that big of a deal. Chris Mara said he never had any doubts the deal was going to get done. John
Correct.
Harbaugh said he had never really any doubts the deal was going to get done at the end. So I think a lot of those final negotiating points that have been reported, they appear to be accurate. But again, I don't think this was a push and pull where anyone was taking some type of final stand, like I get this or I walk, either from the Harbaugh side or the Giants side.
No deal breakers, John.
That's never where this was at the end of the process. And it sure seems like there's optimism. And again, we have to see once these guys actually get in the room and start making these decisions together, that this is going to be a process where these guys can work together, make things happen. Joe Schoen was actually asked if he thought they would be at some point possibly bringing in anyone from the Ravens front office staff to join his staff. He said he doesn't believe so.
Correct.
At this point. So
Correct.
That's kind of where we are right now.
A couple items more from Chris.
Yes.
He was asked about the front office as well, and he said, I anticipate very little change in the front office. So that echoed what Joe Schoen said.
Well, again, I think one of the reasons they decided to keep Joe Schoen on is because they liked the way the front office was structured. So
Yes.
that is not a surprise to me.
And both Chris and John Harbaugh talked about how Joe Schoen has extensive knowledge of the National Football League, and they want to use that. That is part of what this whole collaborative effort is. I think the other item here is that this is kind of funny. You know, we always talk all the time about scoops and when stuff gets out and when stuff doesn't get out. Chris Mara said that when they brought John Harbaugh to the building a week ago last Wednesday, he flew up here on Steve Tish's private jet, as you guys all know. He said they had a handshake deal. He said John Mara was the closer. When Harbaugh got in the building, the idea was not to let him out without a deal, that John Mara was going to close it, and he knew that he would, and they had a handshake deal at 4:30 in the afternoon last Wednesday, and he laughed, and he goes, but it didn't get out until about 11 o'clock that night.
With all the drama of restaurants and meals and flights. That's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes what's out there, news does not spread as quickly as people think. I'm with you. To me, that was the most important stuff from Chris. I don't think I have anything else on my notes here. Oh, he was asked about selling part of the equity stake to the Cook family, and he said that is going to have a zero impact on our business. It's just an equity thing, which is basically cash access. You talked about Harbaugh being the most important cog on the wheel. He'll have the loudest voice, but it's going to be collaborative. And I think that's kind of where we are in terms of what Chris had to say. All right, let's jump to Joe Schoen here, Paul. And I said I guess the thing that he talked about the most was that he just feels encouraged, that it seems like he and John Harbaugh both kind of see this roster in a lot of the same way in terms of the players here.
Yeah.
He did say they have to continue to get together in order to figure out how to build out this roster. Of course, the first step is building a coaching staff out. That's really the first thing they have to do, which is the most important thing.
Starting tomorrow.
And that begins tomorrow with the interviews with assistant coaches. I don't want me to jump ahead to Coach Harbaugh again, but he did say later on that he has an idea of some coaches from Baltimore that will be joining him here, but nothing's for sure yet, so he didn't want to give any names. And obviously, just from a factual standpoint, you have to go through the entire interview process with OCs, DCs, with the Rooney Rule, make that compliant. So that's where we are in terms of that. Joe Schoen said he's not surprised that John Harbaugh valued the job because ownership and quarterback are oftentimes the two most important factors.
Yep.
And he felt the Giants are in a good shape in those types of situations. They really hit the ground running once the season was over, trying to land him as their coach. You kind of talked about already, Paul. So they're aiming for Malik Neighbors at the start of training camp.
Yes.
You never know how these things go, but that's the aim. They do think Scadaboo will be able to participate in some way, shape, or form in the offseason program.
Starting
when the
April
players
6th.
get back in April. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's doing everything right away on April 6th.
Right.
But you hope he can at some point go and participate there. He said Jackson Dart is a very positive person, so he loved every coach that he had a chance to talk to.
Which was hysterical.
Which I thought was pretty funny. Dart and Harbaugh obviously got along. You had to pull them out of their little chat early to move that meeting along. Because they knew they had a 7:30 flight out of Teterboro they had to get to.
Throw in, John, the one item, too. He said that it wasn't arranged, but Dart and Harbaugh had their own phone call,
They did.
too. Which goes to show you how excited both guys were to work with each other.
And then Harbaugh also said later that he had a separate conversation with Malik Neighbors as well. And he was excited to talk to him.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, every box was checked today, folks.
Anything else from Shane? I think I got everything
Shane,
right.
Nothing else from Shane. Let's see here. No, nothing else from Shane from the side note, no.
And then from John Harbaugh, just the stuff again he said to us on the side. He talked to him lead on the phone, joy and excitement. He actually asked about whether he was surprised the Giants' record was as poor as it was given the record. And he gave a really good answer that, look, this is a league of tight margins, couple plays at the end of games. That's how you win games in this league, by finishing games. And he said, look, I thought our Ravens team should have had a better record. They should have didn't. Things happen at the end of games, and that's the way it goes. The one answer I really like, Paul, he said he's really excited. In Baltimore, he built this up, and then he maintained it, right?
Right.
He's excited to kind of start the process over and build it from scratch from the beginning. So he's excited to try to start that process over again.
He specifically cited a conversation with his brother Jim, who said that. because Jim, as we all know, has been in a few places, while John has basically been in that Baltimore Ravens cave for 18 years. He said, Jim basically said to him, no, you're going to get reinvigorated when you start the process over again. And obviously, look, this is a very tight family. In fact, Jack Harbaugh and John's wife, Jack's wife, John's mom and dad were both here today too. And I had an opportunity to talk to them as well. And I just think that, right now, I think this was a very interesting comment that John had said. I thought when he said here, in terms of Jackson Dart, and I think this is important because we all know the quarterback is the flagship player on the roster. He said, you always have to have a quarterback who makes plays and guys who can make plays out of the pocket. He wasn't talking about him necessarily being a runner. What he was saying is you got to be able to be creative.
Well, I think part of it was being a runner.
Part of it, but you have to be creative. Yes. It's those off-schedule plays.
Well, he did have Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, so he definitely knows something about that.
Well, no doubt. And for a guy who's been around for 18 years, who, remember, coached the statue and Joe Flacco, you understand he did talk to us about evolving and how you have to adjust and adapt. He said fundamentals. I thought this was interesting. He said earlier during the press conference, and I just want to mention this one phrase because I thought it was important. He said fundamentals, change can be good. Andy Reid told him that, but he also said fundamentals and the process doesn't have to change, but sometimes the methods do. You have to be able to morph.
Yeah, he said your football principles are set in stone, but how you going about achieving
exactly
those principles can sometimes be drawn up in the dirt a little bit, whether it's how you're scheming, even, how you're training, how your plays. And he said you have to evolve to survive, right? If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, the league's going to catch up to you. There's too many good teams, too many good coaches, and people are going to catch up with you. So you always have to continue to evolve and change. From the presser, I'll just say this. Nothing really jumped out at me except that the energy level is so high. So high.
Yes.
And you can tell he gets that from his dad.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, I was happy you were able to catch up with somebody in your age group at the press conference. Congratulations.
I had a really good conversation with his parents.
I'm sure you talked about 50s TV. It was perfect.
They actually have Italian heritage.
Oh boy.
Which was so cool. Yes. We
of course that's what you talked about.
Of course.
Surprised.
And also I asked Jack what he saw in the film. John Harbaugh said on the podium, do you remember what he said?
What did he say?
He said, my dad told me 3 days after I lost the Ravens job, he said, my dad was looking at Giants tape and told me that's the team. That's the one you better take a look at, especially the offensive line. Can you believe somebody actually said that? I know. Okay? So I went up to Jack when I talked to John's parents, and I said, Jack, I need to ask you something if you're willing to tell me. And I mentioned John's comments on the podium. And he laughed. He goes, absolutely. I saw the first game that Dart played. I said, right. It was the fourth game of the Giants season when he played the Chargers.
Well, you know why he watched that game, right?
Jim.
Yes, correct.
Okay. He goes, man, the Giants look really good. And he said, I will tell you, I only studied the offense because I wanted to see the quarterback. I wanted to see the concepts. And he said, you know what I saw? First of all, a quarterback who can play. That's the first thing. That quarterback can make plays. And the second thing that I saw was a lot of really good, hard-nosed, tough physical football by the running backs and by their offensive line. And he said, I told Jim, you got to look at these guys. They're tough, they're physical, and look at that offensive line.
He told John.
He told John.
I'm going to do that a million times.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen, folks. Maybe we should just call Mr. Harbaugh. So I laughed, and I said, you do understand that hadn't been the case before this year, right? And he laughed. He goes, all I know is what I saw on the tape, and I told my son. I said, good enough for me. So we'll see. We'll see. I did get the impression that John Harbaugh clearly takes advice. He's very tight with his parents, and he takes a lot of what his father says to heart. And I also know...
This isn't me trying to be funny, by the way. It reminds me a lot of your relationship with your dad, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, and quite frankly, Belichick and his dad.
Yeah.
Right? So the other thing I would say about this, though, in terms of the offensive line, and I don't want to reach here, folks, but here's Jack praising the offensive line, telling John, Joe Shane has mentioned before that there are some very good coaches here.
Don't start
I'm simply saying I think maybe if there's going to be some holdover, maybe there's some hope for that, and that's about as far as I'm going to go.
Right, and we'll see this coaching staff kind of take shape. I mean, I'd be surprised if they are hiring like position assistants before they hire the coordinators, just because I feel like the coordinators would have a hand in that. But Who knows? Maybe not. And I'm sure we'll get that stuff slowly trickled out over the course of the week. All right, let's go to the phones. 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Guys, I suggest you go to the Giants Huddle podcast if you haven't. Had a good rapid reaction with Bob Papa to the Giants hiring of John Harbaugh over the weekend. And then yesterday in the afternoon, we posted up my interview with Ian O'Connor, and he really goes into great depth about how this came about and how they tracked John Harbaugh down, got the job done, and hired him. It's a great interview. And then, hey, I guess I'll tease it. I guess I can, right, Pearson? Tomorrow, exclusive. I did 20 minutes with Tom Coughlin this morning on John Harbaugh becoming the next Giants head coach. So it was, if I do say so myself, phenomenal. It was just a great interview. I love talking to Coach Coughlin. He's the best.
He sure is.
He's a tremendous guy, and he's still super sharp and super energetic. So,
and a big part of this process.
It seemed like he was ready to coach the team himself. Yes, and I found some stuff out that I didn't know before that. So make sure you go check out that interview. That'll go up at some point tomorrow, whenever Pearson has the chance to put the old edits together and get that up on the old interwebs. All right, 201-939-4513. Oh, you can find the Giants Huddle podcast, of course, on your favorite podcast platforms, giants.com/podcast. Giants YouTube channel, or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Let's go to Jonathan Westchester. He's going to lead us off today. Jonathan, what's going on?
Hey, guys. How are you?
What's up?
Great day today for the Giants and for us Giants fans. Very exciting. First, wanted to give kudos to the Maras and Tisches and to Joe Shane for getting this done. So, Paul, you were mentioning your conversation with John Harbaugh's dad about the Giants' offensive line. I was struck by that part of the press conference also. And I think Joe Shane deserves credit, by the way, for building a solid enough team to impress John's dad and attract John. But anyway, I might be a little premature on this. I probably should have waited a couple weeks to call in about this.
No, you're fine. What do you got?
All right, so what popped into my head was the first off-season roster move that I'd like to see under John Harbaugh. And this is very under the radar, but you turn on the second half of the Giants' home game versus the Eagles, where Scadaboo was manhandling the Eagles' defense, and the Giants put up 34 points, or the Giants-Broncos game, where the offense is putting up over 30 points against what was thought at the time to be the league's best defense. And the common denominator there, and also in the last two games this season where they put up 34 points a game, was none other than Austin Schlottman playing center. So you look at Schlottman's 2025 PFF stats, 0 sacks allowed and 0 hits allowed. How about we make Austin Schlottman his extension the first off-season roster move? Again, probably odd that I'm calling about this today, but that's what popped into my mind.
No, Jonathan, that's fine. I appreciate the call. I love the deep cut roster decision things here. Look, Schlottman did a great job when he got asked to come in, and you did not see a drop-off. At least I didn't notice a drop-off, Paul, going from John Michael Schmitz to Austin Schlottman. He did a really nice job.
Solid.
If they want to extend him and make him a Giant next year, I'd have no problem with that as a backup. Again, I think until we know how John Harbaugh views this roster, I think making any assumptions on who they might be interested in bringing in and who they might not be interested in bringing back, I think it's very premature, because, Paul, we got a pretty good feel over the years about the type of players that Brian Daboll valued, the type of skill sets they had, and how he wanted to build the roster out. And obviously Joe Shane worked with them to fulfill that vision. But I don't know if we have a really great idea as to what that looks like with John Harbaugh as the head coach just yet. So, yeah, sure, but what does Harbaugh think? And I don't think any of us knows the answer to that question.
No, and look, it's going to take us not just a couple of months, but it's probably going to take us a full season to truly understand what this guy's all about. We think we have an idea, but, until we see the man operate, we won't know. And look, I will say this. From 18 years, and rack your brains on this one, John, because I'm going to ask you to contribute on this particular.
Okay.
No, this is important. Usually, guys who are disciplinarians, guys who have a harsh structure, usually at least have some players that at some point you hear things that, I wasn't happy. I didn't like it very much. I didn't get along with him too much. How many former Baltimore Ravens who have retired have you ever heard come out and say they weren't very pleased with playing for John Harbaugh?
Well, I'll do another tease. Later on in the week, I think it's going up Friday morning, maybe, I think. I talked to Qadri Ismail, who does pre and post for the Ravens on their TV. And I'll give a little tease here. You should check it out when the interview goes up, because there are some good stories in there. That early in Harbaugh's career, when he first got there, and he had to win over the defense, because when he got there, the defenders wanted Rex Ryan to get that job, but they gave it to John Harbaugh instead.
Okay.
So a lot of the defensive players
questioned it.
Yeah, they really didn't care to listen to him much.
Okay.
And this actually came from Ian O'Connor. If you go back to that 2016 ESPN story he wrote about the Harbaughs, it's in my replies. I replied to one of our Twitter followers with the link. When he got there, the all-star players had multiple lockers. And he said to the guys, look, I just don't think it's fair. I think everyone should have one locker. And that's it.
Okay.
Terrell Suggs was not interested in that opinion. He had the second locker boarded up.
Oh!
Suggs took it down. The next day, boarded up again. Next day.
Oh, that's a great story.
Suggs took it down. And they kept doing it until Suggs got tired of tearing it down.
Wow.
And he stuck with one locker. That's in the ESPN story. It's a great story. But long story short, where I'm trying to go with this, he started out that way, much more of a fierce, harsh disciplinarian type, as he thought he had to establish himself, but became more of a player's coach as he went along. Kind of like Tom Coughlin, right? You give him a little bit, as you're there, you become a little bit softer.
The parallels are unbelievable.
So we'll see what it looks like now when he gets here. Does he feel like, all right, it's a new place, it's a new building, I'm trying to establish this thing. Does he feel like he really needs to be firm and put the foot down early before he can loosen up a little bit? Or is he going to be the same guy that left Baltimore that starts here? I'll be curious to see how he handles that.
Yeah. Usually they try to be harder early and then pull back. That's the MO that most people do. Anyway. Oh, man. Look, folks, I know I'm chuckling a bit, but just the comparisons. We've heard so many comparisons to Tom Coughlin over the years, and especially in the last year when you talk about Harbaugh. And after meeting him today, he's a little bit of a younger Tom Coughlin, obviously, although Tom came here in his late 50s, John. John Harbaugh is 63. So
That's true.
He is getting a later start, but my goodness, did he not seem like he was in his mid to late 50s to you?
Oh, the energy level is off the charts. But that's what it was like with Tom Coughlin, too.
Of course.
I mean, I can tell you, Tom Coughlin's, he's got to be almost 80 now, right?
I think he is 80.
The man I talked to this morning, I would not have guessed was 80 years old.
I know. Every time I see him when we do the J-Fund functions, I'm like, Coach, you going to break into jumping jacks?
Like, you're trying to keep up with him.
It's awesome.
And this isn't like, the lion keeping up with somebody else thing. This is actually, like, that's how energetic he is.
Three people.
He is.
3 people in this world who I hope I have their energy at their age. Mick Jagger, Tom Coughlin, and Bruce Springsteen.
I think that might be the first time we ever heard Mick Jagger and Tom Coughlin uttered in the same sentence.
Stop me up! If you stop me up, I'll never stop.
It's really good.
Thank you.
I like that we had Paul Dottino in the same sentence as Belichick and the Harbaugh family earlier.
Very cool.
Are you good now?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just a little excited.
Wow. I think we got to turn that into some like tease, Pearson. Sheesh. You sang Bruce before. I've never seen you do the Mick Jagger before.
Okay.
I feel like you needed to be holding the mic stand while you did it, because that's the
Can
Mick
we disconnect
Jagger
this?
thing. No, I shouldn't have said anything. I shouldn't have said anything. I take it all back. I take it all back. Don't break my equipment, please. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Rob in Connecticut. He's up next. Robbie!
Good afternoon, gents. How's it going today?
We're good. What do you got?
Well, hey, look, first of all, I want to say that if I were the Rolling Stones, I'd be really worried about that. What I just listened to, I mean, when's the single going to be released there, P-Dot? That was fantastic.
Now, Rob, here's the only problem. When Paul releases his singles, they only go out on 8-track. So unless you have the 8-track player at home, I'm not sure you're going to be able to listen to the single.
I do have an 8-track player, actually, Mr. John. So, yeah, we'll talk later about that. So, I'd just like to say, if Mr. Mayor is listening, I hope you feel better. You know, we're all thinking about you, and my best wishes for your recovery as soon as possible.
By the way, he was at the press conference today in attendance, so that was very good to see.
Yes, we should definitely mention that.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, Kaji Ismail, formerly known as the Missile. I used to watch him play for Syracuse football back in the day where they were really good, back in like 91, 92, and he, that team, Pasqualoni was their head coach. Wow, unbelievable.
To make it, Rob, if you want, if you're really old, after I booked the interview, I asked our producer here, Pearson Butler, I said, do you know who the Missile is? He looked at me like I had 6 heads. I said, well, how about the Rocket? Then he looked at me like I had 8 heads. No idea.
Well, the Rocket, Rahi, but he played for what? Notre Dame, right?
Yep, correct.
He didn't really amount to much in the pros, but yeah, he was good. Anyway, my point I want to make is this year, finally, when we face the Eagles, it's like we won't lose before kickoff even starts. You know what I mean? So just the Eagles alone, I feel great about that. What do you think about that, huh?
Well, Rob, the way he talked about it today, that gets me excited. He goes, look, our goal is to go out there every week and prepare to win every single game. We expect to win every single game. Are we going to? This is me paraphrasing now. No, we're probably not. Mm-hmm. But that was the way Tom Coughlin always looked at it, too, that there is a way and a path to victory in every game you play. And it's the head coach's job to put the players and team in a situation where you can find that path and achieve it. And that's what John Harbaugh is going to do every week. And he's going to believe and put these players in the best position to do just that every week. And it's going to be very nice to see that.
So who are we going to draft now? How does that change? Does it change? What do you think?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know how much different the vision is of Shane versus Harbaugh when it comes to building a roster. Like, we didn't get into personnel conversations with John Harbaugh. My hope, Rob, and Paul and I were chatting about this, is that when we go out to the Combine, if he's in attendance, we'll get him on BBK and we'll have a chance to have a conversation about the type of players that he values, how you build a team, the order in which you build a team. But look, they talked about to me, if you look at how the Ravens are built, Rob, they were still very much of win in the trenches first and then figure out the other stuff later. Though Pearson and I went through their draft picks last week, and they drafted wide receivers in the first round like 4 or 5 times.
They did have a few.
So I don't, as of right now, Rob, I have no idea how this hire will affect what the Giants do in the draft. I don't.
I do have an idea. I'm thinking, remember 1993 and Reeves came over, and then we brought like Mike Nolan over and half of the Broncos? Do you think it's going to work out like that?
I don't think there are enough Ravens that are free agents.
No, probably not.
Like, if you look at the Ravens free agent crew, there aren't a ton of guys, and I have a YouTube question about that too. So I don't think you're going to be able to do that. Like, Lamar Jackson's not coming. Like, Zay Flowers ain't coming. Like, Justin Madubuike's not coming. You know, Kyle Hamilton's not coming. Marlon Humphrey's not coming. Like, these
people over, like, you remember we brought over, like, Michael Brooks, we brought over Carlton Bailey. Well, he was a Bill.
The kicker, too, right, Treadwell?
Those defensive stalwarts that filled in the gap. So we were, like, really good on D that year as well, if I can remember. Although we got slaughtered by the 49ers. Still upset about that, by the way. But
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Look, here's what I would say about...
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate the call.
About John.
We have some open lines, by the way, guys. Give us a call, 201-939-4513.
Earlier this morning, I had a very long talk for another show that I'm doing with Vinny Serrato. Spent over 20 years as a personnel executive in the NFL. Won a Super Bowl with the Niners. He's tight with John Harbaugh. In fact, he's in Baltimore right now. He's been there the last couple of years doing radio work, analyzing the NFL and the Ravens. And I specifically asked him all about Harbaugh from a front office perspective. We've heard the coach's perspective. We've heard the player's perspective. I wanted to know from a front office perspective, what do you see with him? And specifically, I asked about the draft. And what Vinny told me about Harbaugh, which, again, that's on another show that I interviewed him on, which I'm going to air tonight. Excuse me. What Vinny said was, Harbaugh is not afraid. He understands positional value. Okay? So don't expect him to draft a kicker. Don't probably expect him to draft a running back. He does understand positional value. But that ultimately, he said, John's philosophy is probably going to be, first it'll be about the kind of player he wants, tough, smart players.
Loves football.
Smart, yeah, and loves football. But the other item that he threw in there was,
he telling me smart, tough, dependable? Hello?
No, he didn't go with dependable.
I know he
didn't go with dependable.
I was waiting for that one.
He went with tough and smart.
Yes, he did.
Tough and smart and loves football. But the other thing that Vinny said, because Vinny has been very close with John. In fact, he actually met with him a lot during the draft process with the Ravens. He said the thing that you'll find is that John is very particular, okay, about I not only want the best player available, but I really do want to consider the need position we have. And he's not going to hold it against the player if the slot is a little higher than it would otherwise be.
Usually coaches are more apt to lean towards need, which makes sense. You're looking more for short-term fixes than long-term stuff. You know what I mean?
And to his point, I asked him about what you said with the receivers. You had said it on a show earlier this week. I said, they did take a lot of receivers pretty high. And he said, yeah, and Zay Flowers hit, and the other guys not as much. And I said, but what does that tell me about John? He goes, listen, whether it was Eric DeCosta or Ozzie Newsome, they were truly collaborative. He said, I will tell you that. They did not get into wars over this. But he said what it shows you is John was not afraid to double up on a position.
Right.
Not afraid.
They drafted 2 tight ends in the same draft, Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews.
So he said, you won't get that.
And by the way, like first and third rounds. Like it wasn't like fourth and sixth.
So he won't be afraid about a position. And then the other thing is he won't be afraid about taking a guy in the first round, even if you don't think the positional value is there. He's going to take the guy.
Like Kyle Hamilton, like Tyler Linderbaum, like Patrick
So I laughed,
Queen.
and I said, okay, so you're talking about Downs, the safety, then at 5 for the Giants. Is that what you're saying? And he laughed. He goes, I'm not saying that. I'm not telling you who he's going to draft. I don't know. So anyway, but interesting stuff, because, yes, that's the kind of stuff now that I want to ask, because that's the third layer of the onion for me. So anyway, I share that with you. That's part of what I talked about with Vinny this morning.
No, I think that was great, Paul. And look, I'll just go through it again if you guys weren't listening last week. Working back from 2025, I'll just give you their first-round picks, and I'll go deeper than that. Malachi Stark, safety. Nate Wiggins, corner. Zay Flowers, wide receiver. Kyle Hamilton, this was their highest pick during this stretch, pick 14, safety. Rashad Bateman, wide receiver, 27. Patrick Queen, linebacker, 28. Marquise Brown, wide receiver, 25. Hayden Hurst, tight end, 25. And then Mark Andrews at 86, tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marlon Humphrey, cornerback, 16. Ronnie Stanley, offensive tackle, 6. That was after their one sub-8 win year when they won 5 games that year. Rashad Perryman, pick 26. 2014, C.J. Mosley, another linebacker, pick 17. Matt Elam, pick 32. The safety, I believe. They list him as DB. I'm pretty sure he's a safety.
Yeah.
Courtney Upshaw, the linebacker at 35. That was a second rounder. I'll stop there. Jimmy Smith, corner, first round the year before. So
he did say, Vinny did add one other thing. He said if there's a favorite position.
And by the way, Linderbaum was also a first round pick the same year they drafted Hamilton. They picked him at 25 in the same year.
He did mention one other item because I asked him about, does he have a positional preference? Obviously, quarterback number 1, right? But he said if he's got a positional preference, John really does like corners. He's big on corners. Now, they haven't taken a ton.
They're 2
that's not a ton.
No, it's not a ton.
But he said John is very, remember.
Actually, 3. Jimmy Smith, Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey. So that's 3.
And he was, I believe he was secondary coach with the Eagles under Andy Reid.
Well, 1 year.
Yeah.
For 1 year.
So he's got some experience with DBs.
Absolutely right. All right, 201-939-4513. Let's go to Todd in Pennsylvania. Todd, what's up?
How are you, gentlemen? I'm just over the moon with this signing, obviously. 45-year Giant fan moving to Pennsylvania years ago. I have to endure all these Eagles fans, which is very difficult for me. So I'm looking forward to getting even with them at least. My question was, look at the offensive line performance last year, much better under Priscillo, much better with your GVRs and, Illuminor, who's a question, he might stay or go. My question is, do you think they use capital like that number 5 pick or maybe something in free agency to get long-term solutions at some of these positions, mainly right tackle if you don't get Illuminor back, or one of the guard positions, or even center? Thank you very much. That's my question, and go Big Blue.
No, appreciate it. Look, I think the hope is that if you let Illuminor go, Marcus Bowe is your long-term solution at right tackle, and then that's who your guy is there moving forward. Obviously, you don't know that. I'm always in favor of adding to the offensive line every year myself. Remember, you don't have to use a high pick to find a starting guard.
You do not.
Or center. You don't. You can use a mid-round pick on that. And
David
I think
Deal, Richie Seubert.
No,
right?
Yeah, Sean O'Hara, right?
So undrafted.
I think when you look at it, Paul, those are some of the spots that I think you're always looking for a long-term solution, right? If you can. They're harder to find in free agency because they're really good players all the times don't become available, and when they do, they're very expensive. But in the draft, look, I think, you look at wide receiver, you look at corner, you look at offensive line, to your point, maybe a defensive tackle, linebacker, Michael McFadden's is a free agent. Bobby Okereke's got only a year left on his deal, right? So that's another guy there.
Sure.
So that's what I look at in terms of that, Paul. What's your take on this question?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, it was interesting for me today to see both Bowe and Ezeudu attend the presser. That was kind of neat. These are two young offensive linemen, one guy who's brand new and one guy who's been here a few years and has been sidetracked by injuries. And, of course, being moved around a lot. The fact that they were here today, and, we could tell you guys who were here. That's not a secret. They were out there at the presser. So I thought that was pretty good because it shows their willingness and their eagerness to see this new guy, and they want to work and they want to develop. I don't know, honestly, what Harbaugh thinks about either one of those two players.
No one does.
Right. So, can they be part of the long-term offensive line solution? Who knows? But it's at least good to see that those guys are hoping to interject themselves into the conversation. How about that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I think that is important to try to figure that out. And look, always continue to build on the offensive line. The job is never done, and you can never have enough depth.
No, and Jack, his father, John Harbaugh's father, said to me, one thing that I wanted to make sure my kids knew, and that is, I want you to be teachers when you go into the coaching profession. I want you to be teachers.
And that John used that phrase many times today.
Many times today.
Coaches or teachers.
You could see these guys are so tight. He said, but, I told him, hey, not only do you have to be a teacher, but you have to identify the guys who want to be taught.
Of course.
And that's why, again, for me today, and there were some other guys here today.
And by the way, John even said, how about John saying during the press conference, looking right at Joe Shane, and by the way, the guys here that maybe don't love football enough, we probably need to get rid of them.
He said they can play for another team.
Yes, correct.
That's exactly what he said.
Exactly right. Which I'm like, wow, that was frank.
Let's see. Schmitz, Manhertz, Tracy, Casey Kreider, Ezeudu, Bowe. They were all here today. Jameis Winston was here today. Did you see anybody else from the current team? Or is that everybody?
You said Runyon?
I didn't say Runyon.
Runyon was here.
Yeah, you said you saw Runyon. Mm-hmm. So maybe we got to throw him on that list. But so, there were more than just a couple of guys here from the current team, and that's a good sign.
But look, when you look at the offensive line, and look, we talked about this. They kind of, again, I don't want to use the word fixed, but they made great progress on the offensive line this year, right? Great progress.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem. Illuminor free agent. Greg Van Roten free agent. Schmitz 1 year left on his contract. Runyon 1 year left on his contract. So in theory, after next year, 4/5 of the guys could be gone.
I know.
And then all of a sudden you haven't solved, you know what?
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So that is going to be to me, as much as I want to get a wide receiver here, and especially with Neighbors coming off the injury, I do think it is critical that you get another playmaking wide receiver here, whether it's bringing Wando back and adding somebody else or just adding somebody, however you do it. You have to make sure you're good at wide receiver to help your quarterback out. It's hugely important.
Yep.
continuing to work on the offensive line so you don't have a backslide there, that might be the most important thing this team does this offseason.
We've been talking about this for months, folks. The two coordinators, specifically offensive, defensive, and the offensive line coach. I'm sorry. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody else on the staff. But those 3 spots, John, for me, that goes right to the heart of the matter.
And you notice there's like a little interdivisional competition going on now, right?
Yeah.
Because the Eagles are looking for an offensive coordinator.
I know.
So are the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
The Cowboys are looking for a defensive coordinator right now. So are the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the names the Cowboys have interviewed for their DC are out there. It's some really good names.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same names are names that were reported as guys the Giants might be interested in talking to for their defensive coordinator position. So the Cowboys are a little bit ahead of the field there because they started 2 weeks early because they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't fire their head coach. But you might want to move fast there before the guy you might want to hire gets hired by somebody else.
Well, I think, didn't Joe Shane tell us? I don't think it was John. I think it was Joe said this afternoon he was going to start talking with Harbaugh about the staff this afternoon, and then tomorrow they were going to do interviews.
And look, well, based on the fact that John already said, I hope there's some guys that I'm pretty sure are coming from Baltimore. Something tells me a lot of those conversations have probably already happened.
I'm sure.
It's not starting now. I think it's already started.
The question becomes, and, I'm not speaking out of turn here because it's been reported that Todd Monken has had interest from teams to potentially be a head coach.
Oh, Anthony Weaver, another guy that has connections to Harbaugh on defense.
So, I mean, no matter what John Harbaugh might want, those guys got to take care of themselves.
Of course.
And they'll be probably waiting a couple of days for either offers to come through or not come through.
That's why you got to move fast.
So,
but of course, if you want, for example, Jim Leonard is a name that I know Dallas interviewed for their DC. It's been rumored that the Giants might be interested in him. Not former Colts fullback Jim Leonard?
No, defensive back. Jets.
There was a fullback Leonard that went to Rutgers.
No, different.
Brian Leonard. Brian Leonard. Thank you. Sorry.
He was a regular
Brian
tailback.
Leonard. Yes.
Yeah.
He was like an all-star type.
Okay,
kind of like crossover
I'll buy that
guy. Yes, that was thinking about Brian Leonard.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Jim played for the Jets.
Who I know is not the same guy, by
DB.
the way, but I thought it was both. Anyway. So you can't even hire a guy like that. Anybody that's still playing. So anyone on the Broncos, anyone on the Patriots, and their defensive coordinator is on a heater right now, by the way. How good is that Patriots defense playing? Holy cow. Congratulations, Pearson. And then on the other side of the ball, in the NFC.
Broncos, too, whole staff.
Correct. The Bills put up some points on them in that game.
But after the year that the Broncos had, there are people who were hot for them.
The Rams obviously have some hot assistants on their team looking. And then Seattle, obviously. Mike McDonald has guys on his staff on defense, and even Clint Kubiak. So
what a coincidence that the teams still alive in the playoffs have hot names.
Well, that's always how it goes, Paul. It's always how it goes. All right, let's go to Charlie in Portland, Maine. Hello, Charlie.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon, actually. Hey, you guys.
I was expecting you to be disguised as part of the catering. Charlie, I thought you'd be disguised as a member of the catering staff to be in there during the press conference today.
So you all had to wear suits?
No, you didn't have to. I chose to. There are many people here that didn't.
This is a big deal.
I know. Did you guys talk about ties, same color, or what?
He's a little darker.
No, I'm much darker, and I have some blue threaded in with the red here.
I just got the red. I just got the classic red.
No, you guys look good. You guys look sharp.
Well, thank you, Charlie. It's nice of you to say something nice.
We know.
Hey, hey, was Dart there?
No, he's out of town.
Yes, he is out of town.
Yeah, what a surprise. That's why Winston was there. He's going, hey, Coach, I'm here. I don't know where the other guy is, but I'm here.
Charlie, Dar was here for 2 weeks after the season. They said he said he talked to every interview candidate. He is allowed to go home to Utah where his family lives. That's okay. It's not a big deal.
I thought it was funny that John Harbaugh mentioned he's well aware of Jameis Winston because of how he beat him last year.
Yes, and you can tell he was a little crusty about it too, which is very funny.
Hey, just a couple of observations. Joe Shane was so friggin' scared and nervous. I don't know what his issue was. I'd never seen him like that. I mean, you saw that, right?
When he spoke to the media after the presser was over, he was much more relaxed.
Yeah, when we got to him, I thought he was Joe Shane. I didn't see anything different.
But at the podium,
Yeah,
at the podium, he did seem a little nervous. I'm not sure why.
Well, if I may, I'm going to speculate, Charlie. You don't have to agree with me, but I'll speculate.
No,
John Mara is not well. He's battling cancer. And quite frankly, Joe, as the general manager, was the guy who went to the podium, and he acted as the MC or the spokesperson.
Yeah, normally John Mara would be the person doing it. That's actually a really good point, Paul. I didn't think about that. That's actually a really good point.
And John's not in a position to really do that.
And John was sitting, and he probably, because, he started strong. I wonder if he looked down and saw John there, and that's when he got a little bit nervous. You know what? That's actually not a bad point, Paul. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, Joe had to step up and take very, very large shoes.
Yeah. It looked like he was headed for the restroom until John Harbaugh there he grabbed him and shook his hand and he smiled. But anyway, the only one thing that I thought was a little bit John when they asked him about structure, and he kind of said it doesn't really matter, blah blah blah. But it did, because if it didn't happen, he wouldn't be here, right? Because even Chris Mara said that we didn't get the okay about the structure until John said it on Saturday morning, and he said that
was part of the negotiation. That's correct.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
right?
but Charlie, to be fair, Joe Schoen himself told us in the off-podium conversation, he said, to be honest, that's always the way I had it in Buffalo anyway. He said, in fact, everywhere I've been, the GM and the head coach were always collaborative. Now, for the Giants to put it in writing was a change. The Giants had never had that in writing before. So that is different.
And Charlie, you're right. Chris Mara basically did talk about that in his press conference, no question. And by the way, I'm not sure if you were listening at the beginning of the show. That was the first thing we talked about when we came on. Yep.
No, I didn't.
And so for Joe was like, no, he said, truthfully, I always had that. And we know, by the way, how collaborative he was with Dable. I mean, those guys were in lockstep. There was never anybody going over anybody's head. So to Joe, it's like kind of business as usual. But yes, a contract is a contract. You have to put it in writing or it's not official. I understand.
And I'd like to know this. What is the degree? How many degrees are there, or levels are there of loving football? I mean, you can say you got to love football, and the guy say, "Yeah, I love football." What's the problem?
No, Charlie, it isn't about saying that you love football.
It's about doing it.
It's showing him that you love football. So that's why whenever a head coach gets to a place for the first time, it's a feeling out process, right? John Harbaugh is not going to come in here and just start lopping off heads and clearing house at the start. A lot of times, more change comes heading into the second year than in the first year. So these players now that are here on their contract, they're going to have to show John Harbaugh that they are the type of players that he believes he can build with to turn this team into a winner.
Charlie, if you really want a good indication.
And thanks for the call, Charlie. Appreciate it.
A new coach comes in, and John, I know you will agree with me on this 100%.
Never.
New coach comes in, and he talks about loving football and about guys either wanting to be here or maybe don't need to be here. You're going to see a lot of those guys who may have thought about staying away for maybe some of the spring workouts or some of the off-season training stuff. You'll see those guys here, okay?
A little extra pep in their step?
I think there's a little bit of incentive to perhaps show your face.
And I don't remember who talked about this. I think it was Joe Schoen. He was asked about it. I think John was asked a question too, John Harbaugh. There's a lot of Johns around here now. It's going to be very confusing. All spell their names with an H, by the way, which is the proper way to spell
They do.
John, by the way, just for the record.
Yes.
I
mean, John Bon Jovi doesn't do it right?
No, he does not. It's probably not his real name, so it's okay.
Okay.
It can be fake.
See, I know who he was, too. I bet you I scared you there.
He's from New Jersy.
That's right. He is from New Jersey.
I assume you know everything about New Jersey.
Yes.
Nothing else. Just New Jersey.
Go ahead.
I forget what I was even talking about there for a second. Oh, yeah, he was asked about turning it around quickly in 1 year and how a lot of teams and Joe Schoen talked about how in his career in football, he's had 4 different situations, Tony Sparano, Brian Dable, I forget the other ones, where you bring in a new coach and in the first year, the team automatically makes the playoffs and it turns around quickly. He's like, look, new person comes in, new ideas, it energizes everybody, they lock it and they really get checked in right away on everything that's going on, and you have success right away. Sustaining that success, that's the difficult part. So that's something to keep an eye on.
And even Joe admitted that with the whole Dable thing in year 1. He was an NFL Coach of the Year, went to the playoffs, couldn't sustain it. I mean, it's the trick.
Oh, and that's the one thing John Harbaugh. And again, that's ultimately why you. And this is this was a great quote from Chris Mara that I didn't bring up when we talked about it. When he talked to us on the side.
Go ahead.
That he did a ton of research on all these coordinators. You read about them, you look at all their numbers and their schemes and what they are as people, but you still really don't know who they are.
Right.
John Harbaugh,
you know
who he is.
Yes.
And that's why he was the guy they had to get.
Yep.
201-939-4513. And by the way, I think that's true because we talked about it, right? We talked about all these coordinators. Like, yeah, they can be a great coordinator. You have no idea what type of head coach they're going to be.
Look,
it's not just us. It's the people doing the hiring, too, that think that.
We thought for months and told you on this show that, if we were making that decision, it would have to be a guy with this kind of pedigree and this kind of experience.
We just didn't think one might be available.
All of a sudden, some big-time superstars came available, didn't they?
Absolutely right. All right, let's go to Len in Columbia, Maryland, and Jay in Phoenix will wrap us up. Len, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Good day to be a Giants fan.
Yes, sir.
Hello to my friend Charlie. I hope he's still listening because I'm going to overlap just a little bit with some of the things he was saying.
Yeah.
Look, Harbaugh sounded good. He looked good. Type of guy who's going to take command of a room. I think when he speaks in that locker room, people are going to listen.
Well, they better, Leonard. He ain't going to be here.
Yeah, there you go. I think they'll figure that out pretty quickly, John.
Well, I think they will too. I agree.
Yeah, I think the leadership quality is there, and he looks like the kind of guy who's going to, tell you what he wants, and he's going to hold you accountable for it. I'm going to ask you guys a question. This is where I touch on one of the things that Charlie was hinting at. Excuse me. Are you guys comfortable with the role clarification, ownership, general manager, head coach?
I am, Len, and here's why. A lot of people have made a big deal about this, that they've never had this where the coach hasn't reported to the general manager. And I sat here and I'm like, Tom Coughlin was not a head coach that long ago. And while the general manager in those situations did have final say on who you would draft, that was always the case, and maybe that's something different now, no argument.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Coughlin did not report to Jerry Reese. Jerry Reese could not fire Tom Coughlin. One person could fire John Coughlin. Well, I'm sorry, two people, John Mara and Steve Tisch. Those are the people that could fire Tom Coughlin. So the separate report, to me, isn't necessarily what's different, because that's pretty much what we had here when Tom was here, at least in my opinion.
Since George Young, honestly, George had complete authority. I'm the GM. Everybody reports to me, and the ownership group gave that to him. Ever since George retired, it got a little more cloudy and a little more fuzzy with Ernie Accorsi.
Now, final say on personnel stuff, that's different.
That's different.
That's new. And I think Chris Mara was, and look, Joe Shane was asked a question directly today about it, and he goes, yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I'm fine with it. Doesn't bother me. So it seems everyone's pretty much on the same page about it, Len, to be honest with you.
So anyway.
Well, I hope that's the case. How about the role clarification is important, but on the who reports to whom part of it, Buffalo just yesterday went in a completely different direction, and gave the general manager, even more authority than Bean has had in the past, and said he's running the show. Bean is the architect in Buffalo. Who's the architect with us?
Well, I think, as Chris Mara said himself, Harbaugh is going to have the most influence there, but again, they're insisting that it's collaborative. See, here's the one item that maybe we haven't said before, John. We may not have said this. I think we may have. I'm not sure. Both Chris Mara and John Harbaugh said independently in different meetings with the reporters today that both of them were very impressed with the experience, the knowledge, and the familiarity that Joe Shane brings to the table with all of his years of NFL experience.
Mm-hmm.
They both said that Shane has a lot of value to digest as they work together. So I don't know if that kind of gets to the point of your question, but they do value him.
Len, hold on one second. I will answer it like this.
Yeah.
This team will be built in the vision of John Harbaugh.
That's
Joe
true.
Shane will do a lot of the work and the engineering to put that roster together. But the visionary for what this team's going to look like sounds to me like that's going to be John Harbaugh's vision.
How about making this in one simple phrase? It'll be Joe Shane to do the how-to to get Harbaugh's house in order.
Harbaugh gets the what, and Joe Shane's handling the how.
I think you've begun to clarify it for me, John and Paul. But it's easy to say it's a collaborative effort, but we all know in the end somebody's got to be in charge. And somebody's got to set the tone.
Chris Mara said,
got to set the values, the culture, the direction.
And that's going to be John Harbaugh.
Build the organization. They're going to say, we're gonna warm up before a game in this end of the end zone,
and that's going to be John
rather
Harbaugh.
than the other end of the end zone.
That is going to be John Harbaugh, Len. That will be John.
Well,
Harbaugh.
I hope you're right about that, and that we don't run into anything.
Do not lose 1 point,
If you're
Len.
paying a guy $20 million, it's got to be for a year.
Do not lose one thing.
It's got to be for more than just coaching the team on the football field.
Okay, but there's 1 point you should not lose. Go back and listen to John Harbaugh's comments at the podium today. He said, we all work for the boss. And the boss does have the final say. And we all have to answer to the boss, and that is John Mara.
Okay.
So please understand that.
That's a great point. We've got the roles clarified. The last point I was going to make had to do with decision-making authority, although maybe we have already covered that in the other instances. I mean, somebody is, first-round pick. We're at opposite sides. Somebody's got to have 51% of the vote. It's like the arrangement that the Maras have with the Tisches.
Yeah, Len.
When it comes to football operations, Mr. Tisch can advise all he wants and suggest and so forth, but it's collaborative up to that point where John says, here's where we're going. This is the direction we're going.
Well, and again, based on what, and I appreciate the call, good stuff, and I think based on what every person said today, we know where that 1% leads. I mean, we know that's where Harbaugh is. And that's what it's going to be. But again, to me, it's a failure of process, and I think both Joe Shane and John Harbaugh would agree with this. It's a failure of process to get to that point.
Right.
Where you have your GM on one side of the argument and your head coach on the other side of the argument, and they're just like on diametrically opposite sides of the spectrum on a question.
It should not get there.
No, because you should be building through the process to these big decisions and be in conjunction as you go through it. Now, might you get to a point where you have, you're picking at 5 and there are 2 guys on the board and you had a disagreement? Yeah, that could happen. There's no question. And I think it was made pretty clear today that what the deciding factor is when that happens. So we'll see how it goes.
I ultimately keep going back to that boss statement because if push does come to shove on
John
something,
Mara makes the call.
John Mara's making that call.
That's a fair point too.
I mean, that ultimately that will be where it is. And by the way, Giants ownership, no matter what the situation was over the years, Giants ownership had veto power over anything.
And by the way, like you talk about like who was final say, like John Harbaugh was a huge figure in Baltimore, right?
He was with both Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta.
Well, so was Ozzie Newsome and so was Eric DeCosta. That's my point.
Right?
Like I don't think either Ozzie, neither Ozzie nor John nor DeCosta were steamrolling the other.
Correct.
Saying it's my way or the highway. Like that's not how this works, right? Like you want to build up to the point where you're all in agreement on the path you're going down. I think based on what Joe Shane's done in the past, he worked really well with Brian Daboll. And I think he built the team in Brian Daboll's vision. I think they had a shared vision because they both came from Buffalo, so it was probably a little bit easier.
I agree with that.
To have that shared vision.
I agree with that.
But in the end, that's the GM's job. It's not the GM's job to tell the coach what his team's going to look like. It's the GM's job, if it's working properly, to build the team that the coach thinks he can win with. That's what the job of the GM is.
Well, it's no different than any of the past GMs here, whether it was Ernie Accorsi or any of the other guys who said, I don't call the plays and I don't tell the coaches who to play.
100%. 201-939-4513. Jay in Phoenix will wrap us up today. Hi, Jay.
Hey, guys. Excited. It was a great press conference, and it was fun to hear some of the interviews afterwards to gain a little bit more insight into this. And so I just want to, as a big time fan of this person, I just want to give a shout out to Tom Coughlin and his role in helping Jim Harbaugh and Giants ownership to realize, hey, this is what this team needs. You know, John Harbaugh bringing a guy who's all about football and accountability. Tom Coughlin recognizing that.
Yeah, and Jay, I'm not sure if you're listening earlier. I'm not sure if you're listening earlier, Jay, but I did about 20 minutes with Tom Coughlin on Zoom this morning, and that's going to be going up on all of our platforms tomorrow. So you should. It's a great interview. It's fantastic.
Perfect. Yeah, I just came on late at the end.
No, you're good, Jay. No worries. What else you got for us?
The show's on the archive.
Last thing, though. This one's for Paul, and I have been watching football and just salivating for years over what the Chargers are trying to do, what the Ravens are trying to do in the running game.
Mm-hmm.
But Paul, Maurice Carthon,
love them.
Charles Way, Greg Camella, Jim Finn, Madison Hedgecock, and Henry Hynoski.
Patrick
The Giants are going to be running with a fullback, and somebody tell Elijah Chapman to work on his hand so he has a shot at it, maybe. All right?
That's an interesting thought, because there's no doubt. In fact, one of the things that Jack, the father, had said to me today when he talked about the O-line and the running back, he said, just to be, and you could see he was getting excited. He's like, you just power that ball ahead and push it through with the physicality. And I said to myself, well, you really like Scatterbo? And he goes, oh, yeah, I like him. No kidding. But I'm with you.
I know we don't want to talk about free agents for other teams, and maybe he brings his guy from Baltimore. But, hey, I just love that, having that aspect of the game. Doesn't need to be the whole thing. I like spreading it out and throwing the ball around a lot too. But it's a lot of fun to just know that you can line up with your guys and that you're going to out-physical them into,
my friend,
into the end zone.
Every toolbox needs a hammer. Just remember that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Jay.
Exactly. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Hey, appreciate the call. Well, Paul, this is fun.
It really was. It's been a very, very fun day.
And now I'm excited, until we talk about John Harbaugh being excited about building this up from scratch himself. I'm excited about learning about what this is going to look like and how he builds it. We can't get into this now because we got to roll. But, just seeing how he puts this together and learning about how he wants to build a team and kind of learning, it stinks because we really knew the old system well and all the people here, and there's a comfort level to it, and we knew it well.
We did.
But it's exciting to now be exposed to something new with a coach that is a great coach, to see how he does it and to see what the results are with the roster. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm pumped.
I think not only with the new administration that comes in, but also with the young players that we believe are the foundation of the future. This is not like some situations where a team kind of falls into the quicksand and the rebuild is going to be long and tedious and it's going to be nasty. No, we believe here, as John Harbaugh does, that there's a lot here to turn around quickly.
Again, to compete. We're not talking about winning a Super Bowl, but just be competitive.
Turn around is competitive.
Correct. I'm just making sure that
I'm not getting carried away, folks. Trust me.
Real quick, Inside BBI podcast, many talk the talk, but Harbaugh brings the resume behind the talk, and he wants 3 Ravens to try and get Linderbaum, Patrick Ricard, and Charlie Kohler, the tight end, which I think is interesting. I think him and Bellinger are actually probably pretty similar. And Bellinger's a Frazier. I think Bellinger's a Harbaugh type of player. So
I think Bellinger is probably going to be back here, but that's just a guess.
At 11, Amani, John, can you tell us the pass pro stats of Schlottman versus JMS? Wants to compare them. I'll do that when I get back. I'll talk about that in a little bit. T-Tom 13, Rex Ryan is DC. No. So if they did that, would Brandon Jacobs blast to the wall like the Kool-Aid Man and stop that single-handedly himself?
He'd be on a silver bullet train from Georgia to stop it. Guaranteed.
Yes, that would not go well. Doogie 515, in terms of Slayton contract, and Joe restructure the deal or trade him? I'd have to look at that. I mean, you could always restructure a contract. Yeah. You'd have to get a player to agree to it. So that's something we can look at as we get deeper into the offseason. And then James O'Keefe, NY2CZ. Paulie Dotson, Schmeelk, Harbaugh exudes confidence and stability. Hope this transfers over to the players in the locker room. Yes, I absolutely agree.
That's the best way to get this thing off to a fast start.
All right, so you guys are not going to see me on this show. I'm looking at the schedule here until February 3rd, a Tuesday. Why? Because in 2 days, I'm going to be traveling to Texas for the Shrine Bowl and then to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl.
Well, we will hear from you.
Like I said, you're not going to see me, but you will hear me.
There you go.
So I will be with these guys this Friday from Shrine, and then next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, probably Friday from Senior Bowl. On the show, and then we'll talk about what's going on out there, and I'll cover the prospect draft stuff. Paul, Sitak, Lance, Malusis will handle any news back here. I'll help cover any of maybe assistant coach or coordinator hires that happen. I would think before I'm back, they're going to have coordinators hired.
That would be nice.
And I don't know who I'm going to talk to out there about it, but I'll find somebody to talk to about it if they'll have me, and we'll have that conversation as we move forward here. Paul, good stuff, my man.
Great show, John.
All
A
right,
lot of fun.
for Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. From the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio, keep getting better. And just a reminder, folks, Special Olympics New Jersey's annual Snow Bowl is heading to Rutgers SHI Stadium in 2026. It'll be on the field from March 6th through March 8th. The 6-on-6 tournament will feature competitive recreational and co-ed divisions, and all proceeds benefit thousands of Special Olympics New Jersey athletes across the Garden State. Register your team today at njsnowbowl.org. That's njsnowbowl.org. For Paul Dottino and Pearson Butler, I am John Schmeelk. Tomorrow, we're back with another episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll talk to you then.